Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have this adorable tutorial to share with you, making this birthday shaker card. For this card I used a stamp and die and some shaker pieces that I had gotten for free from Pretty Pink Posh when I placed my last order with them. It was their birthday and they had a whole bunch of freebies for orders over a certain amount, and I never seem to have trouble hitting those amounts, so I'm putting them to good use today. To get started, here is the stamp and the shaker pieces. I didn't decide to use the die until a little bit later, but it's a scripty Celebrate die. It's very pretty. And I'm also using this 4-square backdrop by Lawn Fawn. I'm going to kind of turn it into a giant Polaroid. So to get started, I'm trimming down my cardstock. I'm making a top folding card. I learned the right term for that in my last video. Thank you for those who helped me work out what it's called. And once that's all set, I'm then cutting this backdrop with some white cardstock, and I'm going to be trimming out the inside. I just want it to look like a giant Polaroid. And I got this idea, I think it was from, I'm going to say maybe it was Elise Constable, who shared a card that used this die in this way. I don't think it was a shaker, but she definitely made it look like a Polaroid. It was really cute, so I had to give it a go myself. So the stamp I'm using today is these adorable little hedgehogs, and they're celebrating. They've got an adorable little banner and a bunch of presents. And so here I am just deciding where I'm going to stick that in this Polaroid. I'm going to be stamping directly onto my card base. So I'm using my stamping platform to hold everything into place so that I stamp this in the right spot on the first go. I ink this one up and stamp it a couple of times to make sure I get all of those adorable little details. Now on to colouring. I'm using some alcohol markers and some Copic markers to colour in these little characters today. Using that super simple method as I always do to colour them in, which definitely comes in handy when colouring in such detailed little images like this. It saves a lot of time. So I'm just going in with a lighter colour and a darker colour for the shadow, and for most of these parts I'm blending it in. I didn't blend so much on the hedgehogs this time because the colours I used are so similar, and when I blend them together it just looks like one, but I wanted them to have just a little bit of shadow there. I've gone with some browns for the hedgehogs, but all the other colours I'm using today are inspired by the clay sprinkles that I'm going to be using in the shaker card. I feel like using similar colours to that just ties in everything really nicely. So I've got some pinks, purple, blue and white, just like the stars. Once I was done with the colouring, I then added my white highlights. I'll leave you with some music while I do these steps. Don't they look adorable coloured in? I love this stamp and I'm so sad that I haven't used it before today. I thought I better start working on the Polaroid itself because it's going to have a sentiment on the front before I start working on the back, sticking on my window sheet and using my foam for the dimension. Today I'm using the Celebrate die. Like I mentioned earlier, this was also free as part of their birthday promotion. I'm just really surprised with how delicate this is. I've worked with some scripty word dies in the past, but they've all been quite chunky, whereas this is just so thin and delicate. I was surprised that I could actually layer it to get that bit of thickness, sturdiness, and that tiny bit of dimension because these letters were just so thin. But I'm sure you'll agree, they're really, really pretty and it looks really nice when I stick it on the front of this card. To add a little bit of sparkle to this card, because there's actually no other sparkle in it, which really surprised me, I'm going over the word Celebrate with my Wink Stella, and today I'm just using clear. With this card being a shaker card, there will always be a point where it's being held upright and all the shaker pieces are going to fall to the bottom. That will leave the background very white and very plain, so I decided to just add a couple of tiny little star stamps all over the background so that even if it is standing up, there will still be just a few stars hanging around to fill in that space. With this stamp being so big and its own little scene, it's very different to what I usually use. A lot of the scenes that I create, I make out of multiple stamps, and I don't do masking because I'm just not good at it. I haven't had time to practice that yet. So I have a lot of little cut out images, but with this being one big piece, that took the pressure off having to mask anything. But it also left this very, I guess, one-dimensional. And I was too scared to cut all of this out and then stick it into shaker because it'd be very tedious to cut it out, for one, and two, then my shaker pieces would get stuck all around it, so it didn't make sense to do it that way. So stamping it directly onto my background was obviously the way to go for this one. But that left it with no shadows and no dimensions, so I went in with my Dusty Concord Distress Oxide ink. I put a little bit of that on my mat, watered it down with my paintbrush, and just gently brushed it under all the images to just give them a little bit of shadow. I feel like this instantly turned it from them floating in space to them resting on some kind of floor. Here I am using some really thin double-sided tape to go around the very edges of this frame. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to add my acetate over the top, and this will hold it in place nicely. For the last detail on this, before I add my foam and turn it into a shaker, I'm going to be adding my Celebrate sentiment. For this, I'm just using some PVA glue with my fine tip applicator, and I'm going to put it in that space on the front. I love this look because it looks like someone has taken a photo and written down a caption, only their writing is perfect. It was then time to add the foam so that my shaker pieces could move around freely. So for this, I'm just using some Kids Adhesive Craft Foam. Today's colour is a very boring beige. It was just what I found in my stash of things that had already been cut up. And I'm just going to add very thin strips around the edges. I can go a little bit thicker down the bottom where I don't want the pieces to fall behind completely. But for these edges, I made sure that they were super thin so that you couldn't really see them from the front when you're looking through the window. Just before I add my moving pieces, I'm going to pop a bit of my anti-static powder all over the background and around the edges where my adhesive foam is, just so that we reduce the chances of anything getting permanently stuck or overly static. So I'm using these adorable little star clay sprinkles. They are in such gorgeous shades of pink, blue and white. I'm just going to leave them all in the very middle of this piece so that when I glue the top down, none of them are going to be anywhere near the glue and hopefully none will get stuck. I then add my glue to the foam on the back of my card front, and then I'm going to gently place this over the top and pop a couple of things on top of it just to hold it down evenly. And then I'm going to show some severe self-control here and not shake it until I'm confident that it is dry. Let's give it a shake and see how we went. And there we have it. This adorable birthday shaker card is complete. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It came together so quick and easy. And I'm so happy I got to use all of these elements for the first time. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I hope you'll stick around to see what I make next. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!